The Power Factor Show. Episode 99.
You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Brought to you by Safariland and Hodgdon, the gunpowder people.
Welcome to Power Factor. I'm Larry.
And I'm, once again, Rick.
And this week we've got viewer questions.
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics for Power Factor Show episodes, and we're just going to run through some, what I like to call it reader's right, because I think that's kind of clever. It sounds kind of good.
Where does that come from?
I think it's
like
the letters to the
something?
editor column in some particular magazine
Yeah.
I read. I don't even remember which one. That's what they call it, reader's right. So I think it's kind of clever.
Okay.
Okay, let's get on with
we'll
it.
kick it off here. This is from Chase Lane. Actually, this is gratuitous, whatever. I put this in there. It's more of a comment, not a question. So he says he's an IDPA shooter. He's a new IDPA shooter. He says he's learned a lot from our show. He's bought all the right gear the first time out. Showed up to his first match. Everybody commented on how he had the appropriate equipment and everything.
Ah, see.
And even found himself in a rules discussion as a new guy with maybe one or two matches under his belt. I don't know.
Right.
Found himself in a rules discussion, having an intelligent conversation, and attributes Power Factor Show for that. So,
See. And who's that?
So this guy is Chase Lane.
Chase, you're a demographic.
So
thanks so much.
That's exactly what Power Factor is here for. So
let's help someone else.
So thanks for that. So we've got a question here from Shane Fleming. What do we think of the Beretta 92 as a production gun? You don't hear much about it. What do you think?
I would say with good reason, but go ahead.
So I've got a lot of experience actually with the Beretta 92. I shot an Elite 2 model, 92G model, and I can definitely answer your question. It's a decent production gun. It can be a decent production gun. The one thing why you don't see a lot of them is that, well, there's a few reasons. First of all, you've got your traditional double action, or what people call double single, right? Your first shot's at long double action trigger pull, and after that the gun cycles and recocks the hammer, and then it's a nice little single action every shot thereafter. A lot of guys don't like that. Everybody likes the same trigger pull every time. You got your striker fired,
Now,
polymer guns.
Do they make DAO versions of the 92?
They certainly do. And
Okay.
you could have a 12-pound trigger pull every time if you
Instead of
like.
just the first time.
About a full inch long instead of just the first time if you really like.
Yeah, just saying.
You don't have those nasty safeties to get in the way when you're racking the slide on the D model.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'll say a few things. Another reason why you don't see them a lot is Beretta doesn't advertise. I don't know if you've noticed since about, I don't know. I don't think I've seen a Beretta advertisement since the mid-90s, and because they have a government contract where they don't need a handful of professional shooters interested in their product. They have the military interested in their product, and some law enforcement too. So that's the reason why you don't see them.
Now, the version of the 92 that you shot had the ambidextrous decocker on the slide.
Exactly.
Did you find when you racked the slide that you engaged the safety?
That's a perfect lead-in to what I was going to talk about. So I had the G model, which means it doesn't have a safety. So you got the safety levers on either side of the slide, right?
Right.
But any Beretta G model, it does not have a safety. You press down to decock the hammer falls, and when you let go, the levers pop back up.
Okay.
And so you cannot accidentally put a G model on safe. So,
or intentionally, for that matter.
you can't even. It can't be done. So if you're gonna shoot a Beretta 92, 96 being the 40 caliber version of that, I highly recommend getting a G model. They've got several of them out there. They got a Brigadier G. They got Elite Series, which haven't been produced for a number of years, maybe 5 years. They've got what they called a GSD, was one of their first rail frames. You could put a light or a laser on the front. There's Vertec Gs, which the Vertec's the one with the backstrap, the straight backstrap. And I liked it actually. I shot one for 3 or 4 years. 92G Elite 2 is what it was called. And since they stopped making them, they're actually fetching a pretty high price these days. And someday, I think I want to get another one. This time in a Vertec, and I'm a 40 caliber guy, so the 96G Vertec is what I'm kind of after. And just missed one on Gunbroker, but don't have the money for it right now anyway. So, yeah, you don't see a lot of Berettas out there. I'd say less than 1% of the shooters. I see a guy every once in a while show up. It's usually the same guy with the Beretta, and yeah. That's about it. I mean, it kind of falls in that Beretta, SIG, Smith & Wesson, traditional double action, and the problem is that people
all the guns that have essentially been chased out of production by the striker fired guns.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the main reason you don't see them. But yeah, I mean, if you got one and that's all you got and you want to shoot it, I'd go for it.
Get out there and shoot it.
Go for it. There's no reason to not show up just because that's all you got. Okay, Daniel says, will reloading, I paraphrase, but will reloading 40 caliber in a Glock automatically cause it to blow up? We know what Rick thinks.
Well, not automatically. You have to pull the trigger.
Okay. You got to pull the trigger first. No, so I think all that, there's issues with lead in the factory barrels. They recommend against that, and we don't have anything different to say about that either, and we recommend against lead in a Glock barrel. But that whole chamber support thing, I think it's 15 years since they've supported the chamber more fully. Is that a word?
Yeah. It's an engineering term, I think.
I've seen photos. I've even had barrels side by side. You look at a Glock barrel, you look at an STI barrel, they're supported about the same. So if you're worried about chamber support, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would just say, and we answered the question already back in email to the viewer, but to everybody else, just follow your standard good reloading practices. Clean the barrel, maintain everything, crimp properly, don't over crimp the rounds. If you're loading Molly, a Molly coated bullet, make sure you're not scraping the Molly off so that it's bulging outside the case. Just standard good reloading practices, and you should be fine.
Well, and I think too that since they've reduced, I mean, most of the time, if you're going to be shooting 40 in production, for instance, or in IDPA, in stock service pistol or enhanced service pistol, you're downloading it to such an extent that the idea that you're going to run into some kind of pressure problems. Back when Major was 175, 40 was running pretty close to full power factory levels of pressure. And I think then it was probably more of an issue. But since they dropped the pressure down to 165 for Major and only 125 for minor, it's not like you're driving the cartridge really hard and have to worry about case head support as much as you would, with full power service rounds. Just use good reloading practices. And you're not pushing the envelope with 40 shooting either major or minor, so you shouldn't run into any pressure problems. And just don't use cast lead bullets. If you want to use cast lead, by all means get an aftermarket barrel that allows you to do so. But just follow sane reloading procedures. Use recommended powder charges, and you'll be fine.
Right, and that's pretty much all I load. If you haven't heard already, if you haven't got the point yet, you'll get to know me a lot better. That's all I shoot is 40. It's kind of, again, it's back to economics. I've got one setup on my press. Back when I was shooting STIs, I had one set of magazines for different guns. I didn't have to change anything. I even shot 40 caliber in open division. We could talk about details of that some other time, but I love 40 caliber. I think it's the most versatile caliber out there, really. I mean,
okay, settle down.
Maybe it's overkill for production. It's hard to get down into the 120s with a large, like a 180 bullet. You'll be near 140, about as low as you'll get it. But I actually shoot Molly coated Bear Creek 140 grain in my Glock production gun, and it's just fine. So it's not exposed lead. Make sure I clean it every time, and you'll be fine. So, and I think we kind of answered that part right there just now. But is 40 cal the redheaded stepchild of IDPA?
To a certain extent, it is, because there is, unlike USPSA, which allows you to shoot major power factor with bullets of 40 or larger caliber, in IDPA, all rounds other than 45 ACP are scored minor. And since 9mm ammo is cheaper, I think the brass is cheaper, the bullets are cheaper.
Yeah.
People, and there's no, I mean, even if there's no capacity advantage, obviously, but really nobody who buys a gun for IDPA competition is likely to buy a 40.
Unless you're me.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because 40, if you look at it as a sport that's built around self-defense shooting skills, what's probably the most popular type of gun? If you include law enforcement in the self-defense realm, it's probably the most popular self-defense cartridge in the country. 40 is. And yet it really doesn't have a natural home in IDPA because it's needlessly powerful and expensive compared to 9mm. You don't get an advantage for the extra power. You can't shoot it in custom defensive pistol where the power factor is 165. So you really don't see it all that much. You can hand load it down, but like you said, you're probably not hand loading it down to 130. You're hand loading it down to 140. So you're still not getting the great benefit.
When you get the heavier bullet, for sure.
Yeah. So you're still really not getting the benefit that you would,
with my 140 bullet, for example, I use the same powder charge as my major load, and I'm still at like 135. So, and gets the slide velocity going faster. I like that, but yeah, I guess it's needlessly powerful. That's a good answer. I didn't realize for IDPA. I didn't think about the power factor issue. So
yeah, and it's interesting in that the 10mm is also in the same division with 9mm and 40. Which is even crazier when you think about
if you go out and buy factory 10mm.
Well, yeah, I mean a typical full power 9mm is probably 130 power factor, 135. I mean unless you're going to load plus P or something, but it's in that realm. 135. Full power 40 is about 165. Full power 10mm is about 225.
Yes.
So it's like it's one of those cartridges. 10mm and 40, I think both pretty rare. You do see 40 just because there are a lot of cops and people who shoot their carry guns, their duty guns. So you do see 40 in IDPA, but people who are buying guns to play the game are unlikely to buy 40 caliber.
Gotcha. Okay. What we got here? The next question is from Michelle Liberty.
Great name, by the way, Michelle.
This is a question more for Rick. She purchased an Iver Johnson stainless steel 9mm 1911 for IDPA. That's what she says.
All right.
Now she wants to switch out the top end. It's got a 3-inch top end on it.
Okay.
And she wants to change it out to 4.25-inch top end. That's going to result, she says, in a commander slide on an officer size frame. Is that legal for IDPA ESP?
Yes and no. It's legal.
Well, that means no.
Well, it depends. It depends on the configuration of the top end. If the barrel is a true commander length, meaning as specified in the question, 4.25 inch, you're limited to a bushing barrel. You can't use a bull barrel. So you got to make sure that it's not just that it's longer, but that if you're going to buy a separate top end, make sure it conforms to the rules. So if you're going to get a 4.25 inch barrel, full commander length as opposed to a 4-inch barrel, you've got to get a bushing barrel as opposed to a bull barrel. The other consideration is that the 3-inch guns have a shorter frame dust cover than a commander length gun. And it has nothing to do with legality really, but when you put the longer top end on the short frame, you're going to have a gap, maybe like a half an inch of the recoil spring visible between the end of the frame and the back of the recoil spring
Probably
tunnel.
not something you would want to carry that way.
You wouldn't want to get something jammed in there. The gun's not going to fire. If you've only got it in a holster at a match, it's probably not a big deal, but just something to be aware of, that you will have that gap between the frame and the slide.
Interesting.
There are guns on the market that feature the compact frame with the commander slide, and they're generally called a CCO. So it's a well-known configuration, but when you get a CCO from the factory, it's got the commander length dust cover along with the shorter compact butt length.
Right.
So the gun in ESP division would be legal with the
given those
constraints or whatever. It would certainly be legal, but make sure that you understand that you're going to have that gap, and that if you're going to buy a complete top end, be sure you get one with a bushing barrel rather than a bull barrel.
Okay. Hey, good deal. Good stuff. Next question is another 1911 question from Daniel. Are extended mag releases legal in single stack, USPSA single stack, or CDP and ESP? So I know I can say from a USPSA perspective that it is legal as long as it fits the box. We've got a the size of the gun is constrained by a box. It has to fit inside with the lid on, and as long as it's not poking up too tall, if it doesn't make your gun too wide, that it's legal. And then you've got the weight limit issue too, but that's standard stuff there. So
in IDPA, the rules allow the button to be extended slightly from the GI dimension. Most guns on the market now, from the major makers, have an already extended magazine release. So in the sense that you extend it beyond...
So it's the same part, but it's just made a little bit longer?
Just a little bit longer, okay. Yeah. Instead of extending...
That's all one part.
Instead of extending from the frame 1/8 of an inch, it extends, 3/5 of an inch or whatever. But the rules do not allow you to enlarge the button at all. So you'll see oversized buttons that thread on the end. And while they do extend the length a little bit, they also increase the diameter. And you can't do that in IDPA. So if you've got a gun, like a lot of Kimbers, a lot of guns that are sold over the counter now have a mag release that's about the IDPA legal length. And if that's the case, you're fine. If you've got a Colt or an older GI style gun, it will have room to extend it further from the frame. But again, you can't enlarge the diameter any.
So I'm going to put you on the spot now. So when I shot STIs, my favorite part about the STI was the Mitchell right side magazine release button. Are you familiar with that one?
I am.
That relocates the magazine release button to the right side of the gun. Now I'm a right-hander, but I would have to when I broke my grip for reload, my finger would go up on the frame, and I would. It was barely a gesture. It was with my middle finger right here. I would bump that button to eject the magazine, and wouldn't have to shift my grip so much like I would on a bigger gun hitting it with the thumb.
Right.
Is that legal in IDPA?
I believe it is.
Now, I don't know the diameter, and I don't know how far the button sticks out. Is that the constraints?
Yes. I don't think they're... One of the things about the rules of IDPA, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with that. It's like the difference between production and open. You can't characterize the entire sport with just one set of rules. And so I would say in stock service pistol...
Depends on what...
Yeah, in stock service pistol, you certainly are constrained to a greater extent than you are in enhanced service pistol or a custom defensive pistol. But yeah, I think ambidextrous controls in enhanced and custom are legal.
Gotcha. Okay, good stuff. Let's see. We've got a question here from Robert Perez.
Perez.
Okay, if you say so.
Yeah.
He's got two questions, actually. Okay, at Unload Show Clear, what to do if the gun has a mag disconnect safety? There we go. So for the viewers who don't know, a magazine disconnect safety, there's certain guns that will not fire without a magazine in place.
Right.
There's, I know for sure how it works on a Beretta. There's a little tab sticks out on the right side of the magazine that pushes up on a spring that allows the trigger bar to rise up so that it can engage the hammer. When you pull that magazine out, the spring pulls the trigger bar down and it's nothing. You can pull the trigger and there's just nothing there. So now you've finished shooting your stage, and you, at Unload Show Clear, like we talked about in a couple episodes ago, you have to pull the trigger. You have to dry fire the gun and let the hammer fall. So I can say from a USPSA perspective, the best thing to do is right at the get-go, make ready, hey RO, by the way, my gun has a magazine disconnect safety, so when we get down at the end, I've got this empty magazine here, I have to put it in there, and that's fine. Just it's a good thing for
show them, here's my empty magazine.
Here's my empty magazine. Often what you'll see is a guy, when he at make ready, he'll have one round in the mag, so he'll stoke the gun with that mag, take it out, now it's empty, put it in his back pocket, load up a full mag for the stage, and go from there. It's courtesy to tell the RO that that's what you're going to do. If you forget, don't worry about it. Just explain it to him when you get down at the end of the stage and it's Unload Show Clear time, and now you're not on the clock, so you don't have to hurry up. You can just say, oh, hey, by the way, now you can tell him at the end of the stage, my gun's got a mag disconnect safety. I have to insert this empty mag in order to drop the hammer. That's fine.
And because the actions that you're doing fall kind of outside of the normal actions that you would do on under an unload and show clear, there really is no command for remove the empty mag.
Right.
And the gun's already decocked, so it's not, you just be in this endless cycle of showing clear over and over again if you
Right.
don't ignore the standard procedure and just kind of acknowledge, yes, we've determined it's empty, and yes, we've determined that this is an empty mag, and yes, the hammer's dropped.
I might have to look through this blue book here, but I think there's something in here that talks about that, and it says, if that's the issue, we have it in writing now. There's a way around that.
Yeah, well, it was the same deal with lowering the hammer on CZs.
Oh yeah.
There was talk that I've heard people say, I'm not allowed to shoot my CZ in production at a local club because they won't let me decock the gun manually.
Make ready.
Yeah, at make ready.
Because the rule said you can't put your finger on the trigger
when you're loading,
while you're loading, unloading, or reloading, or So
now another thing, depending again on how the disconnector works. On Browning High Power, which is the gun that I have with a disconnector, there's a little plunger that's mounted right on the trigger. And so when you push the magazine into place, that plunger is pushing, well, essentially as you pull the trigger, it's compressing the plunger, and that's what frees the mechanism up to fire the gun. If you take the mag out, the plunger isn't being compressed. And if you look at, let's say here I'm holding the frame, and you figure the little plunger's right behind the trigger, I can just reach up inside the frame like that and depress the plunger and click without sticking the mag in there. And generally, then I don't have to warn the ranger safety officer. Sometimes they are kind of giving me the, just what are you doing there? But it becomes pretty obvious after the first time. And of course, if your fingers are too short, you won't be able to reach it. But just something, if you understand how the thing works and you can find a way to do it without using the mag, then you don't have to bother with it. But either way, just get the hammer dropped. Make sure the safety or range officer understands what you're going to do, and you shouldn't have any problem.
All right. Thanks. IDPA, was there any difference?
No, it's exactly the same issue, exactly the same resolution.
Okay.
Just make sure they empty.
And now Robert also, he's got a second question. Now unload, show clear. Let's say we got a rimfire gun. And what do we do? So the issue there is, first of all, you're not going to be at a USPSA or IDPA match. We don't allow rimfire. But maybe you're at a steel challenge match or a fun steel match. And unload, show clear includes dropping the hammer, which we've been told not to do that on our
Some rimfire guns will take it and some won't.
And essentially the issue is that on a center fire gun, the firing pin, if there's no round in the chamber, the firing pin hits nothing. It's centered on the barrel, right? And so the firing pin goes and it retracts and that's it, and it doesn't hit anything. On the rimfire, in order to fire the gun, it has to pinch the rim of the case between the firing pin and the breech, or the face of the barrel. And so if there's no round in the chamber, your firing pin can strike the back end of the barrel there, and you could chip your firing pin. You could, if the firing pin's hard enough, it could dent the back end of the barrel there, and it could result in misfires down the line, because now you've got this divot there where the firing pin's trying to strike that case, right? And there's nothing behind it anymore because you've made a hole there, you made a divot there. So that's his question.
Well, it can also cause chambering issues, because if you're pecking away at the edge of the chamber and it kicks up enough of a burr that protrudes into the chamber area, the round, especially if you got like a matched chamber, it's fairly tight, the round won't be able to seat all the way flush.
Because you're peening that material
out into the
chamber area, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do? The answer to that is, in Steel Challenge, they have a provision in their rules that allow you to bag the gun with the slide lock back, the chamber locked open, and you show the RO, it's clear, the gun's going in the bag, because holsters aren't necessary for 22s in competition, at least in these games anyway.
Right.
And so you can bag the gun that way. The way I've done it, I've got like 22 rifle I shoot at steel matches, fun steel, and I've got a chamber flag, and I'll lock the action open, and I'll insert the chamber flag, and then back and then put the gun in the case, and that's kind of essentially the same action happening there. It's a way to show for sure that chamber is clear. There cannot be any ammunition in there possible. So. Okay, thanks Robert for that question. The next one we've got regarding Steel Challenge. Where does the bullet splatter go? So we've got the viewer's question. was that we've got these static steel targets. They don't fall down, so when I hit them, they stay there. What happens to the bullet splatter?
I've seen some high-speed photography of the bullets impacting steel plates.
I remember that.
And it looks like a sunflower. I mean, it just
goes in every...
Yeah, it hits the center, if you're hitting it square on.
And it goes in 20 different directions.
It just spreads. It goes in literally every direction.
Yep. And so, yeah, it goes everywhere. Now, one thing I've noticed at the official Steel Challenge, they have hay bales straight underneath the targets. Have you noticed that? So that's to catch some of the bullet splatter. The stuff that has a very short distance, maybe however tall the targets are, 4 feet, it's got a real short distance. That bullet fragment, when it hits the ground, still
moving pretty fast.
Some energy that could ricochet back. And so they catch that with hay bales. But the stuff that goes more sideways or even upward, they're fairly small fragments, and they generally lose their energy pretty quick. So it's still necessary that you keep your eye protection on all the time in case this splatter's going on in the next bay. You know, you could be painting your steel in the next bay over, and the guys next door to you could be shooting. The splatter could be raining down on you. I've even seen one of our friends here walking out of a bay. This was at a USPSA match, but somebody in an adjoining bay shot some steel. A jacket, lead in the jacket separated, and he had a piece of copper jacket like hooked into his arm like a fish hook. Like it would not come out, and it required a little bit more attention. So that's just even if generally this stuff doesn't have a lot of energy when it goes up in the air, there's still a good chance you could be hit by it here and there. Almost always it's not going to do any damage, but just keep the eye protection on.
And steel maintenance helps in that too.
Oh yeah,
as you shoot
good point.
Up, especially USPSA pepper poppers. As you shoot them, they start to
they cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the more rounded they become, the more likely they are to redirect bullet fragments rather than just splatter them straight out.
Not only the entire 12-inch diameter circle gets cupped, but then in the softer steels you'll get little pits, and that stuff is. And you just need to get rid of it. If you've got a bunch of little pits in your steel from people shooting with rifles, you've got to get rid of that stuff, because bullets go in and they turn around and they come right back out. Like half the bullet can come right back out at you.
And once the poppers do start to bend a little bit, you can just flip them around and kind of equalize
hammer
the wear
them back over the next few years.
Well, yeah, and we have one of the guys at our club works in a metal fabricating shop, and they have a huge press. And they put the poppers in there and just flatten them down.
Out again.
Yeah,
okay.
And so you can maintain them. There are things to do.
Cool.
I don't know how, if we have all the official Steel Challenge gear at our range. I've never really closely scrutinized the plates. I don't know if they're thicker or a different grade of steel than the standard pepper popper.
I think either 1/4 inch. No, it's not quarter. It's like 3/8 inch. I think is the standard thickness, and then AR 500. I'm not a steel guy, but I think I've heard AR 500, that armor plate, whatever. That holds up real well against all handgun ammunition. It'll last you a lifetime, really, if you treat it well.
Yeah. So in short, you're probably not going to have to worry about getting hit by any fragments, but keep your glasses on and don't stand there with your mouth hanging open, and you'll be fine.
Right. All right. Thanks for that question. We've got one here from Keith. What do we do for a living? He's guessing we're LEO, law enforcement. Well, obviously we're Secret Service.
Yeah. I mean, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to.
I think we've talked about other episodes. I'm an engineer. I'm a mining engineer, actually. I work in the construction and mining industry, and
you get to blow stuff up though, right?
Basically, yeah, I'm a blasting consultant. As one of the things I get to do, we build tunnels, we blow things up.
4th of July, a lot of fun at your house?
Not at all. No. Ever since I got to play with dynamite, black cats just don't quite do it for me.
Okay. My line of work, I'm a legal records manager. I've worked for a downtown Seattle law firm for 20 years. Prior to that, I did a 5-year stint at Bain & Company, working for Mitt Romney, not for him personally, but it's kind of interesting, 25 years later that, I knew that guy back when. Yeah. So,
cool.
Yeah, so that's what I do.
All right, there you go. And we know Steve's an engineer, software guy. John, gunsmith.
Yeah, he is.
Heck of a gunsmith.
And what does the producer do?
Producer? Do we have a producer? You mean the guy behind the scenes?
The guy behind the scenes. What does he do?
What does he do? He works for
when he's not hanging out on the beach and drinking Mai Tais and stuff.
Yeah,
I think he must have a day job.
Something about some kind of big software company in Seattle. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably never ever heard of him.
Right.
So, okay. Let's see what else we have here. We've got a few more questions. We got a GI guide rod question. You remember that one?
Love the GI
that just came in recently. So, a GI guide rod versus a full-length guide rod in an aluminum frame kimber. This guy, Adrian Silva, sent the question in. He's had some issues, he thinks, with some damage to his frame, maybe, and I don't know that we have any other details besides that.
Yeah, and one of the interesting parts about the question is that, as I recall, the gun was a Kimber Pro, which is a 4-inch gun.
Okay.
And so the guide rod that you would find in a regular 5-inch GI gun is going to be longer than the guide rod that you would find in a commander length gun. And as I was thinking about, is there any problem with using a GI length guide rod? Probably not if you're using the original recoil spring plug that has a hole in it.
Okay.
Because I think the compressed spring length is short enough on a 4-inch gun that if you didn't have that hole through the plug, you'd be banging the tip of the guide rod against the plunger.
Against the spring plug.
Yeah, you break they don't have a bushing. So you'd probably break the plug or something. But I suspect it's on a bushingless gun.
It doesn't have a bushing. So is it got a reverse plug?
I think it's got a reverse plug. Okay. So you almost certainly have got a hole in there. But I was thinking, on a gun shorter than 5 inches, GI guide rod meaning shorter than a full-length guide rod, but if it's a shorter than 5-inch gun, be sure you use a commander length guide rod to ensure that you don't have any interference. Also, some people don't like the look of the open hole at the end of the gun if you don't have the full-length guide rod.
Oh, I like it a lot.
Yeah,
on my 6-inch STI, it looked like an over-under with like 40 up here, 9 down here.
So I don't see that there's any issue. There's people will tell you, the spring, if you don't have it fully supported on a full-length guide rod, the spring is snaking around in there. And if you actually look at a 1911 style pistol when it's in battery, about 3/4 of the spring is supported either by the outer diameter of the guide rod or the inner diameter of the recoil spring plug. So there's really nowhere for it to go. The idea that it's going around like this inside the slide, rubbing on the barrel and stuff, there's really nowhere for it to go. So you shouldn't have any issues. I would say make sure that your spring is of the proper length and whatnot, but as long as you've got the right guide rod for your gun, you shouldn't have a problem.
So there's a couple issues. So the spring plug could bang against the guide rod, the end of the guide rod. The other issue is that make sure your spring's not so long that it stacks.
Right. And the spring that was in there.
Solid. And the spring that was in there, right,
should
is
be
what
fine.
You want.
Yeah.
And how do you tell? I've seen a tip that I've never had to use, but a pretty good tip nonetheless. You can take the recoil system out and put the gun fully in battery, put like 2 pieces of masking tape, one on the frame and one on the slide, and put a mark. And that's where the gun's fully in battery. And then, actually don't put the mark there. I guess you retract it and then put a mark. You retract the slide all the way with no spring in it at all.
With the guide rod in it, though.
Oh, with the guide rod.
Yeah, because you've got to include the thickness of the guide rod.
The head, right. Okay, good point. So then you can mark that when it's fully to the rear.
Yep.
Now you put your spring in and see if it goes to that same point.
Right.
And if not, something is stopping it from getting that far back. And your spring's going solid or your guide rod against the spring plug is hitting.
There's some interference in there.
And then that force is going to get transferred to either the frame, it could get transferred to the barrel feet, depending on how the shape of the guide rod head is.
Places where it's not supposed to go.
Yeah, the energy should not go. The spring should catch all that energy and throw it back forward. So when the slide cycles. So there you go on that one. And we've got a question here. Somebody wrote in about just getting into reloading, and he's looking at different bullets, and he's asking us about Rainier Ballistics bullets. So, we've talked about Bear Creek on this episode, but I've shot Rainiers also. They're a local company, and they make their plated bullets. They're not jacketed. traditionally, where a jacket is, the jacket is formed first and the lead slugs put into it. And these are lead bullets that are plated in electroplate process. So it's got a thinner coating, but they're shiny looking, whatever. And
but no exposed lead.
There's no exposed lead, exactly. That's kind of their. Because
even some jacketed bullets, what they call fully jacketed, the base of the bullet is the exposed lead is at the base of the bullet.
Right.
The jacket doesn't wrap all the way around.
Right, and actually, there's indoor ranges that don't allow that because of the atomized lead in the air. Yeah. So they want what you'll see CMJ complete metal jacket, or when you get plated bullets,
totally metal jacket,
total metal jacket, right? Yeah. The plated bullets, they're since they're dipped in a solution and they're plated with copper, then they're fully encapsulated. Personally, I like them. I've shot again only 40 caliber. I think only 40 caliber so far, but I've shot their 135 grain in my open gun when I was shooting 40 open. I tried many different bullet weights, but I wound up using their 135 grain, pushing them at 1250, 1275 feet per second out of a Schumann AET barrel. Worked just fine. I've shot them in limited guns, STIs and Glocks both, the 180 grain, the 165 grain. And then when I was experimenting with the open gun, I also bought some 155s to try out too. And
now, you can use them in a Glock? They're more like a jacketed bullet than a lead bullet in that sense?
Let me think about that. Did I use it in a Glock barrel? I've used them in a... I can't imagine there would be a problem. I mean, they're coated. There's no exposed lead. I shoot Bear Creeks through a stock Glock barrel. I can't imagine there'd be an issue there. I have heard some issues with the copper jacket separating and having like two holes in the target, like the bullet hole and then like the ragged cut
jacket hole
from the jacket or something like that.
Right.
I don't... And I've heard of that separating. I've never experienced it myself. I pushed them at lower velocities in the limited gun, like whatever that is, 915 minimum, about 950 feet per second. I've pushed them up to almost 1,300 feet per second, all in 40 cal, and I don't know.
Yeah, I've only ever used the 230 grain round nose in my 45 revolver. And they're only going 735 feet per second, so I'm certainly not taxing their abilities to hold together.
Sure. So, anyway, if you want to give them a try, I like them. And, I also like handling them on the press. They're clean. Bear Creeks are nice. They shoot fast. That coating, they're so slippery you can hardly hang on to them. And they come out of the barrel that much faster, too. But, man, your hands get black and everything else from handling them, just even from loading your magazines. Right. In fact, actually, very recently at a friend's going-away party, this was the same friend with the jacket in his arm, by the way, the bullet jacket in his arm.
He recovered then?
Yeah, he made it through the surgery. I actually loaded 180 grain Bear Creek and 180 grain Rainier and shot them through the same gun, my Glock 24 that we showed on my intro episode. And I've got 20 feet per second difference is what I got. So, and like I said, in the past, in the long ago, 4 years ago, I tried a jacketed versus a molly coated, and I saw about a 70 foot per second gain. Now I see from that same 180 grain molly, I'm seeing a reduction of 20 feet per second on the plated. Still faster than a jacketed, in my opinion, from what I've experimented with. It's all about the engraving force and how much force it takes to, get that bullet to engrave into the rifling of the barrel. So they're softer, and but they work. They seem to land where I point them. So
well, there you go. That's half the battle.
That's kind of what you need.
Yeah,
and that's about it. They go all the way through cardboard, make nice little holes. So.
Good penetration then,
yes.
All the way through. Because now, if we had a scoring question, if you shot your Rainier bullet and it didn't go all the way through, would it count as a hit?
Oh man, should we?
You got your rule book? Got your rule book right there?
No, I know the answer.
Oh,
is that our trivia question?
It could be. It could be.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay.
So sure, let's do that. Okay. Any other questions? I think that's all I had written down. Is there anything else you can recall that we've got from the viewers?
A lot of the questions, one of the questions was very specifically about, I've just started shooting, but I don't really know where to locate a club near me. And I'm thinking, wow, well, go and look at the episode called How to Find a Club. Yeah, well, we did an entire episode on it, How to Find a Club. And so if you've got a question, if you're a new shooter, intro to shooting kind of thing, and you've got a question, I'll bet between the first 75 episodes and these Readers Write episodes and answers and questions and answers that you see associated with the episodes on, say, on YouTube, probably your question is going to be answered. And go to the you can go to the forum or the website and find the topics arranged. If you've got a question, say, about rules, just go to the right column and find rules, click on that, and all the episodes that have to do with rules. There's episodes about equipment and techniques. Just look it up, and if you find the episode, unfortunately, like I remember one guy said, I went to a match and I thought I understood the scoring, and then after I watched your episode about scoring, I didn't understand it anymore. And that's obviously not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have the question, watch the episode, and then all will be revealed. But if you do have a question after you've seen the related episodes, go ahead and fire us an email, and we do try to respond to every email. I mean, every bit of you'll have as many as 4 responses. If you ask a question, about how to lead with your shotgun, you're probably not going to get more than 2 responses. But if you ask a question about practical pistol shooting, you might get as many as 3 or 4 answers from us, depending on who feels the most qualified or the most interested in answering. Send us questions about gunsmithing. I'm sure John will jump in. Shotgun questions. Stephen, you have Steve and John working on that. So. Go ahead and send us the questions, and we'll respond to them individually. But then when we get some that we think are kind of general interest, we'll do another Reader's Write episode in the future.
Absolutely. Well, that's. I think that makes a good episode.
Yeah,
hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Got your questions answered on the air, as it were. So trivia question. Is that going to be our trivia question?
I think that's a good one.
All right,
that's a good one.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
so
and it's a USPSA question.
Yeah, I was going to say this is a USPSA question. It is addressed in the rule book. You fire a shot, and for some reason or another, the bullet does not penetrate all the way through the paper target. Let's say even the bullet is halfway in. It's stuck in the target.
Right.
Is that a scoring shot? Does that shot count? Same situation if the bullet bounces off the target, makes a nice dent, you know exactly where it hit. Does that count? It's the same question, same rule. So that's our question for the week. Get your answers in to the
powerfactorshow@gmail.com
or
powerfactorshow.com.
Right. Or facebook.com/powerfactorshow. So thanks a lot, guys, and see you next week.
So we had some good, interesting feedback from the episode in which we interviewed Chris Hodgdon from Hodgdon Powders. And Chris is going to come back on the show again, so in another kind of a Skype view, I guess we'll call it. And so if you have any questions for Chris, specifically relating to hand loading powders, things along that line, fire them off to us, and when we get Chris on the show, we'll try to get answers for you.
Yep. Good. Thanks. Send them in.